Ladies and gents, I am so excited for another interview. Here it is. Check it out. Have fun, and I'll catch you at the end. Welcome to the Daily BA. Today we have a guest, Ronnie.
All right.
Yes, thank you so much for being on the show.
No problem.
Can you give me a little background of just yourself?
Okay, sure. I've actually been in the field doing behavior analytics services since 1967.
Okay.
Then I got a master's degree at North Texas in 70, I guess. And then I spent 11 years in the field providing an array of services in an array of settings. Spent 7 years at a family service agency in Michigan, which is historically social work. The director was a social worker who was very interested in behavior analysis,
Okay.
and he hired me to do behavior analysis. And then I got recruited to go to South Dakota for 2 years to run an autism program. And then I went back to graduate school at West Virginia. And
All right.
the last 30 years I've been in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
So,
Who were some of the folks that were at West Virginia when you were there?
well, I worked very closely with Trevor Stokes, Andy Littell, Rob Hawkins was there, Sharon Foster, Mike Perrone,
Okay.
Phil Chase, Bill Redmond passed through, so it was a great era
Yeah, sounds
for
like it.
West Virginia.
For anyone that's new here, I was taught to ask like what someone's lineage is, like who they studied under, where they went. You can actually piece a lot of different parts of the puzzle, I think, as to how people think, right? And the kind of
Yes.
history they had.
Yes.
It tells quite a bit. So we're at the California Association of Behavior Analysis Conference. I think it's the 37th year, they said.
36 or 37.
Okay,
yeah.
one of those two. We'll fix it if I was wrong on that. And yeah, Bill Heward suggested that I reach out to you because there's some things that you're talking about that are really about dissemination. And just a little bit of backstory about this channel. This channel is currently first set up for behavior analysts. That's the name of the Daily BA. But I've got an opportunity actually, I'll pick your brain about maybe later, for like a 10 video series project where I'll try to kind of actually truly do like this is what behavior analysis is about. But primarily this is, some people have mistaken this as like, oh, are you disseminating? It's like, no, we're just kind of talking to behavior analysts on this. And those things are a little bit different. And I, to be honest, don't know, like we created a podcast called Why We Do What We Do, where we try to get that out to folks that aren't behavior analysts, so a lot of plain English. And that's my only real first dissemination project. Everything else is just kind of sharing what I've learned and the other, kind of getting a community together in behavior analysis. So long story long here is I kind of struggle with exactly like how to disseminate in some ways. I try to lead that effort in some ways, but
Right.
I'm trying to figure out where to go there. So yeah, you were suggesting maybe we start with the definition first, right?
Yeah, most behavior analysts have been terribly frustrated for the last 50 years over very slow uptake of behavior analysis. And I've been looking at the question, and at least part of the problem is the way in which we define behavior analysis.
Okay.
We've largely described it topographically as we publish research and we do talks at conferences. But that could easily be activity without accomplishment because, in fact, we don't know if that had any effect. This is dissemination is ultimately a speaker-listener relation. So if you're speaking and nobody's listening, you're not going to have an effect, and that may well be the case with research publications because the people I'm trying to reach are education administrators, school decision makers.
Okay.
And they're not reading primary research literature of any kind, let alone behavior analysis.
Yeah.
So me publishing in professional journals is not going to be an effective dissemination strategy. I think we have to define dissemination as it's occurred only when what we're trying to disseminate actually gets adopted by somebody. So it results in a change in behavior by your audience.
Yeah, and that's actually a functional definition.
That's a functional
right?
definition.
So it fits. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Now, I think I might know the answer, but are you suggesting that we don't publish, or is that a different realm?
No,
Just to kind of clarify.
I think publication's great as long as you're really clear that who you're trying to influence now are other scholars,
Yeah.
but that's not the sole audience that we need to reach. We need to be able to affect policymakers, parents, educators, mental health professionals, physicians.
Yeah.
Those are different audiences. They have different values, they have different norms, and we have to present to them in a way, get the information to them in a way that's actually going to be effective.
Yeah.
And the argument I've made for the last several years is that Catherine Maurice's book, Let Me Hear Your Voice, was probably the most effective dissemination of applied behavior analysis that we've ever seen.
Yeah.
She had greater impact than Lovaas and all the published research literature. That research was necessary, but she told a very powerful story from the perspective of a parent of a child with autism
Yeah.
to an audience of parents with children with autism. And that had profound effect in ways that we behavior analysts don't, because we
Yeah.
we don't use that kind of narrative in
Yeah.
our storytelling.
Yeah, the storytelling, right? Okay, this is really cool. A couple of thoughts that I have on it. First of all, I was taught that exact same thing. I don't know if that was from you at a conference at some point, or if that was from someone else who picked that up, or where that kind of originated from. But that is something I've literally passed on to others when we're kind of talking in groups.
Great.
Okay, I was going to ask you, is there any good examples that people can look at? And that's one.
Right.
Is there anyone else doing this sort of work that comes to mind that's reaching folks?
Not necessarily in behavior analysis yet, but I think there are some other great examples. There's a fellow who was a marine biologist in an academic setting,
Okay.
who left the academy, went to USC's film school to learn how to do use
Yeah.
film as a means for reaching an audience
Okay.
to educate them about climate change.
Yeah.
His name's Randy Olson.
Okay.
And he's got a whole series of books. The one that I'm most familiar with is called Houston, We Have a Narrative.
Oh, okay.
And he has some really great ideas about how we reach our audience.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Yeah. I was telling him before we hit record that I didn't really know. I kind of stumbled across just getting consumed into some YouTubers all of a sudden, and I was like, why is this? It's not the things that I was super passionate and loving, which
Right.
kind of I stumbled in across behavior analysis like many, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. But then I found myself just consuming all this YouTube all of a sudden, and I think it was a storytelling component. So I've actually signed up for some classes myself.
That's great.
To try to understand it, and I don't know where it's going to go, but it's every day is fascinating trying to figure out how to tell a good story.
well, if you think about
So-
it, the way we behavior analysts tell the story, at least in our professional literature, we start with why is this a problem? Here's how we studied it. Here's what happened, and here's why it's important. But in journalism, that would be considered burying the lead.
Yeah.
Journalism, you tell the punchlines right up front, and then you fill in. And usually what journalists do is they fill it in from the perspective of a single individual who's been impacted by policy
Yeah.
or whatever decisions have been taken.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other way of influencing people. And we behavior analysts, at least when we're trying to talk to parents and educators and physicians and all of that, we need to understand other ways of telling the story.
Yeah.
The story's important, but how you tell it is equally important. And I think
Okay.
we've ignored largely that part of the storytelling.
All right, so the next question that comes to mind is there's a lot of different ways that I see people try to reach kind of that outside world.
Right.
One way that I was taught, and that makes sense with our values, I'd say, is it's the data.
Right.
You got to show them the data. And what are your kind of thoughts around that? Does that work? Does it work under certain circumstances? Is it?
Well, again, I think it goes back to the audience variables. Data are a great way to tell a story if you're trying to tell a story to a behavior analyst. But school administrators, which is my primary target,
Okay.
they have problems
Yeah.
that need to be solved, and they're urgent problems.
Yeah.
And if I'm out there trying to sell them on the principles of behavior, they're not going to be particularly interested, but they will be interested if I can sell them a solution.
Okay.
And so, as a behavior analyst, I might be motivated to disseminate the science of behavior. That's unimportant in this exchange. What's important is the motivational variables operating on the school administrator.
Okay, yes.
And that's the school administrators wanting some relief. And if we can sell solutions that provide relief, then we've been effectively disseminating.
Yeah.
And our solutions will have the science of behavior embedded in it.
Yeah.
But what's important is the solution.
Okay.
When I buy an iPad, I don't know anything about the computer science buried in
Yeah,
that.
that's a great example.
And it doesn't matter. I can use my iPad to solve the problems that it solves for me.
Yeah.
And that's good enough.
Okay. Yeah. I like that. If someone's like looking to really, if they're kind of like, hey, I've got, 5 hours or 10 hours a week that I want to dump into like figuring out how to be that person that helps make that change.
Right.
Like, do you point them to certain resources or?
Well, I would go read Randy Olson's book.
Okay.
There's a woman, Nancy Barron, has a book called Escape from the Ivory Tower.
Okay.
She was a climate change scientist, and she and her colleagues all got very frustrated with the fact that nobody was listening.
Yeah.
And she now runs seminars teaching scientists how to effectively talk to non-scientists about climate change.
Yeah.
And the really cool thing is she has a set of tips about how you talk to
Okay.
these other audiences. And I would read Escape from the Ivory Tower. I think it has a great many implications for what we're trying to do.
Okay. But one thing that was really interesting to me with Headsprout in particular is they've reached a ton of kids with really successful outcomes.
Yes.
But sometimes not really viewed as behavior analysis. So,
Right.
you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I guess the way I would look at it is, one, I think Headsprout is a marvelous computer-assisted reading program. And it's behavioral if you think of it in terms of behavior analysis is defined by having an effect.
Okay.
If this intervention, Headsprout, has an effect, it is in fact behavior analytic. There's principles built into that. And with Headsprout, those folks clearly built in good instructional design, good behavior analysis. The way when you get an answer correct, that's reinforcement, conditioned reinforcement, but it's reinforcement, and it keeps the kids motivated.
Yeah.
The way the instruction is presented sequentially, and if a kid isn't making progress,
Yeah.
it goes off in other channels to catch them up. I think that's brilliant behavioral design.
I've had, a quick side note, I've had 2 opportunities to turn that like on in a classroom simultaneously. And within the first like 30 seconds, it's just differentiated on different screens.
Yeah.
Different kids are getting
Yeah.
different sort of things because that learning decision tree is just breaking out everywhere.
Yeah.
It's so cool to watch.
It's absolutely, talk about database decision making.
Oh man, like
Built into a system.
Yeah,
That's
right.
it's brilliant.
Yeah.
So,
So it kind of sounds like it doesn't have the right form, right? It's not topographically looking
Right.
like behavior analysis. Should we worry about that? Like, what are your thoughts? Does it need to look like behavior analysis?
no,
Okay.
it absolutely doesn't have to look like behavior analysis. Again, if you think about behavior analysis, its root science or its root philosophy is pragmatism. And the truth criterion for pragmatism is successful working.
Yeah.
So if we put something in and it achieves our goal, that's the important effect. Now, if scientists want to go back and pull out and say why, what the behavioral principles were that were involved, that's fine. But another unit of analysis, simply having the desired effect is sufficient. And I don't think we need to all worry about our stuff looking behavior analytic. I think what we ultimately have to worry about is being effective. Applied behavior analysis is having socially important outcomes in socially important settings.
Yeah.
It doesn't say it has to look a particular way. It just has to be effective.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Cool. It sounds like that's kind of the call to action for this video, right?
Yes.
Go out there, make sure it's good and true to the field, but that it is working above all. It doesn't need to look like anything particular.
It does not. It's more important to be effective than it is to be right.
Okay, yeah. It's a beautiful place to probably end this.
Yeah, all right. That works.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you for your time.
Sure.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. This is great.
Is there anything in particular, like if people want to read more about you yourself or reach out, like what do you, I usually direct everyone down to the comments section. But,
I don't know.
I can cut this out if you don't want that.
I have a piece coming out in the Behavior Analyst,
Okay.
or its new name, Perspectives in Behavior Science,
Yeah.
on the importance of storytelling as an independent variable,
Okay.
not as the dependent variable. It's a commentary on a paper Heinlein has written.
Okay.
And Heinlein's addressing storytelling narrative from the perspective of applying a science of behavior analysis
Yeah.
to understand storytelling. But as an independent variable, we can use storytelling as a means for influencing our audience so that they're more likely to be inclined to adopt the practices, the programs that we're selling.
Yeah.
And I think that that's an important message for us to get out, that we need to learn how to tell stories. Catherine Maurice did a great job. There are other people. Pat Fryman is great at telling stories to physicians. So we need, as a field, we need to get far better at narrative and storytelling beyond our graphs. Our graphs are a great way to tell stories to some audiences, but not to all audiences. So we have to act as essentially cultural anthropologists. Figure out what's the values and norms of the audience that you're trying to reach, and then use those mechanisms to reach them.
Okay. Yeah. So that's partially of what some of this channel is about, is trying to sort through that sort of stuff. So that's exciting. I had no clue that was coming out, and I will be getting my hands on that as soon as it hits the email inbox.
I'm not sure when it comes out, but it will be out soon.
Okay. Cool.
Maybe spring. I don't know. I've lost track.
Okay.
So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Do you happen to, I'll release this before ABI. You're going to be down at ABI in San Diego?
Absolutely. Okay. I'll be at ABI the whole time.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I'll make sure to find your sessions and link those below too, so people can go check those out. So yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Check. I only get 20 minutes rolling on these.
I'll make sure that if you can read that, you're a far better man than I am.
I cannot. All right, that's it. Hope you enjoyed. Links are below to the journal where his article will be published. It's not out yet. And yeah, with that said, Ronnie, you were so inspirational, man. Thank you so much. Can't wait to catch up with you at ABI again. If you ever meet this dude or have the opportunity, just say hello. Brilliant. So inspirational. Can't wait to connect with more people. Also, drop your ideas on who I should catch up with at future conferences. There's a lot going on. So yeah, interested. Catch y'all later. That's your Daily BA.